This video is called 20A because I made it later, but it fits in with the tariffs, and I'm going back to an old example that we had. If you remember from week 1, we had the Korea-Japan trade in hats. I reproduced the Japanese domestic market because we're going to talk about an import tariff in this context, but I did want to remind you, so this country, let's see, this country is going to be the importer. So this is going to be an import tariff. And I have reproduced the world market. If you remember in week 1, we derived the export supply curve from the Korean domestic market. We found out that Korea had the lower autarky price of hats, so would be the exporter. And then we derived the import demand curve from the Japanese domestic market because we found out that at an autarky price of 14, they would become the importer with trade. We set import demand equal to export supply and solved for the world price of $12. And now we're going to see what happens when we put a tariff on the trade in hats between Korea and Japan. And if you remember from the last video, the first thing we have to figure out is how they share any tariff, because we've got an upward sloping export supply curve. So that means that Japan must be a large country in the market for hats. So we know that Korea is going to have to share the tariff with Japan. Okay, so that means that we've got a tariff, and the first thing to remember, here's my import demand and export supply curves, and the first thing we want to do is rewrite them, because we now know that if we have a tariff in effect, that the supplier's price is not the same as the demander's price. So for my import demand curve, I'm going to rewrite that as Q equals 70 minus 5 P subscript C. And so P subscript C, if you remember, is what we were calling the consumer's price. And for the export supply curve, we can rewrite that as Q equals 5 PS minus 50. So that's the supplier's price, because tariffs drive a wedge between supply price and demand price. And we know the relationship between PC and PS because we know that the tariff is imposed. So let's say, so we've got PC is equal to PS plus T, the amount of the tariff. And so we can substitute in to the import demand curve, or the other way, but we need to get this expressed in terms of one type of price. So we have Q equals 70 minus 5. This would be PS plus T. That's the import demand curve, and we still have Q equals 70. Oops, sorry, not that. So that's 5 PS minus 50. And right now, why don't we just pick a tariff? And we've always been picking specific tariffs. We don't have a lot of room for maneuver between 10 and 14. So let's just pick a tariff of $1. So let's say that the tariff, or T, is equal to $1, and we'll see how they split it. So what we're going to do next then is we will substitute in for the dollar. So we've got the size of the tariff, so we get 70 minus 5p. Oops, I don't know why I keep making 70 minus 5. It's late at night. PS plus 1 for my tariff. So I took that T out and I replaced it with my $1 tariff. 70 minus 5 times PS plus 1. We're setting export supply equal to import demand is equal to 5 PS minus 50. So we get 70 minus 5 times PS, that's 5 PS Minus 5 multiplied by plus 1 is minus 5. That's the tariff taking effect, and we get 5 PS minus 50. So collecting terms, we've got 70 minus 5, well, that'll be 65. Minus 5 PS. Let's take that over to the other side. So we get minus 5, that becomes a plus. So we get 10 PS. Minus 50, doing this in a rather roundabout way. 65, we'll add 50 to each side. So we get 115 equals 10 PS. And then we go up here. We have 115 equals 10 PS. So 115 divided by 10 is equal to PS. So PS is equal to $11.50. And so in the free trade situation, the Korean hat suppliers were getting $12 a hat, but because this is a large country, part of the tariff, the $1 tariff, was forced back onto the Korean suppliers, so they only get $11.50 a hat now. So we've pushed some of the tariff back, and of course, if we know that PS is $11.50, PC will be equal to PS plus T, so that would be $11.50 plus $1 I should say, being a little sloppy here. So that's $12.50. So what we found out from putting in a specific tariff onto a market, we have a upward sloping export supply curve, is we got them splitting the tariff. That's going to be really hard to show, but essentially you can see that we've got this rising to 12.5 and this falling to 11.5. So we did what we said we would, and the next thing we could do is we can add that tariff into the domestic market for Japan. This is an import tariff, so let's pull this down here. We've got the price rising for consumers. Actually, maybe I'll put in the initial free trade price, which was $12. Kind of a tight sort of example in the sense there's not a lot of room. And then we had the price rising for the Korean consumers up to $12.50, and the price falling to the Korean suppliers down to that's on a slight angle, never mind, down to $11.50. So if I squeeze these in, this is 12.5, the price that the Japanese are now paying. This is $12, the original free trade price, and then this is $11.50. You can see that they've split the tariff equally. The Korean suppliers take 50 cents per unit and the Korean consumers take 50 cents a unit, but that was because of my sort of equal and opposite export supply and demand curves that we discussed before. So in terms of what happens, well, the price to consumers and to the domestic, and from the point of view of the domestic industry, rises from 12 to 12.50. So the domestic industry expands as we would expect, generating a production effect equal to this triangle here of B, and then domestic consumers cut back from Q4 down to Q1, and that's area D, the consumption effect. Those are the two welfare effects. And then of course I'll change my color for this one, but the last effect that's important, of course, is that the government gets revenue equal to $1 a unit. So they get the vertical distance between $12.50 and $11.50 multiplied by the size of the trade at this point, which is that smaller amount there. So that's the That's the total government revenue. And then if you remember, the bottom half is that portion of Japanese government revenue that is paid by Korean suppliers in the form of a lower price, taking a lower price for the good. So this is called the terms of trade effect. All right, so that's not novel because we did talk about that before, but what is new in this video is showing you how to talk about a tariff using the import demand and export supply curve. So it's pretty easy. Just remember that you use PC for the importer because that's the price the consumer is responding to. The supplier is responding to a different price, and the relationship between the consumer's price and the supplier's price is easy to remember. It's consumer's price is PS plus T. You just substitute in for this relationship in import demand, then you just set import demand equal to export supply as you did before. You will hopefully get an answer that makes sense given what you already know about the market. Solve for PS, and then you can use PS and add on the tariff to find out what PC is. So this is a pretty simple thing. And if we had a small country, then the only thing, if this was a small country, it'd be actually a little easier. In fact, I sometimes give examples. I just say a tariff is imposed by a small country, then what you always know is that PS is PS bar. It never varies. Bar over a variable means it's not going to change. So therefore the PC rises by the full amount of the tariff. And that makes them easier to solve.